Hi everyone, I just tried to go live and it didn't seem to work. I'm hoping it is going to work this time. I don't know why. I've been having some problems. Last weekend my screen froze and I couldn't see any of the comments. And this week I seem to be having a bit of problems as well. I do appreciate that it's quite late, later than usual. So I don't know if there is that many people on, but if you are tuning in, hello, good evening, let me know in the comments. Let me know where you are watching in from. I'm going to just check on my desktop to see that it's working, because I don't know why I'm having some problems on my mobile again. Okay, so I'm just going to go for it because I know it's quite late, probably not as many people online as a bit earlier. So I want to talk about what's happened in London, in the London fires, in Grenfell Tower and Ladbroke Grove, which is an area of West London. If you are tuning in, let me know if you are from London or the UK, and if you've been following the story and what your thoughts are, any questions you have as well, post them in the comments. I went down to that area and the surrounding areas of the tower. It's basically in the middle of an, or not right in the middle, but it's in the middle of an estate there, social housing estate. First of all, I should say that for us who live in West London, that area is very significant for us. For anybody who has been born and brought up in West London from a working class background, from a minority background, whether that be black Afro-Caribbean background or an Arab or Middle Eastern background, you know, we all know that area. We all have grown up in that area, whether it's because we have friends and family there, and if not, because we know those roads and those corners and that estate because of Notting Hill Carnival, Portobello Road, and I don't know, for me anyway, and I'm sure for most people watching who are in West London, this was very, very close to home, this incident. We all, or many of us, knew people on that estate, or at least, or at furthest, knew somebody who knew somebody living in that block of flats. So for many, many people I know watching as well, like myself, it's very close to home. So yesterday I went down there in the afternoon, and there are people starting to put their comments in, so write your questions and let me know where you're commenting from. Questions, thoughts about this incident, just let's have a conversation, because I think it's been emotional for everybody. It's certainly been emotional for me, and actually this is something that I grapple with as someone who's a journalist. I think when I was a news reporter, the lines were a lot clearer. You would go and your job was to report the news on the ground. But over the years, as you guys all know, I've told you before, I've come out of a newsroom, I've come out of working for an organisation. And so you come out of that space and you go into a space of commentating and analysis. And then it becomes a bit of more of a blurred line. My current thinking is that actually some days, like today, and maybe before this, the last time before this that I decided not to take my camera out to film was in the London riots. There are certain days where you need to respect the dignity, I think, of people. And if you truly want to understand what they are going through and what they are feeling, you need to go in as a human. Sometimes we put our journalistic hat on. Other times, you know, at the end of the day, when you've been a journalist for over 10 years, that inquisitive aspect of things and that analysis and looking at an area and picking up data, that just comes naturally. So that's it becomes which one's going to be the primary thing that you're going into an environment in. And yesterday I thought that I need to primarily just go and be a human, be a West Londoner, be somebody that wants to help in that community, and that through that process open conversation with people to gain their trust. I've seen so many times how mainstream media especially goes into areas with an elitist attitude, as if these people are in a fishbowl to be looked at through a lens, and they just swoop in and they swoop out, and they're not taking care to listen to what these communities are saying, because by and large there's going to be aspects of the story that is not necessarily based on the community. So the community is not at the core of the story. So that was important to me, to go down and to speak to the community. I've made a few notes because I'm very tired and I feel like I probably am not very coherent, or I'm rambling a bit. But basically, I went down. I mean, well, first of all, I heard about the fire very early in the morning, as it was just about 1 o'clock, as it was just breaking. And quickly got messages on my phone. I looked, and that fire spread so rapidly, I literally could not believe what I was seeing. I was up all night until about 8 o'clock, really wondering actually whether I should go down to the scene, but the fire was raging so badly that I actually thought that its imminent collapse was very likely, and that it might be more harm than good, and actually a danger to go there. And obviously, just reassessing as the day went on, I went down to the area. I went down to the Rugby Portobello Centre first, which is in the estate on the side towards Holland Park. And there were people standing around. There was family members and some resident victims, but mostly family members and friends who had heard what had happened, couldn't find loved ones, sitting on the road, very upset, visibly crying. Many of them still fasting despite what had happened. And there was a lot of media, but mostly just community members milling around. And there was a few tables, and behind that just mountains and mountains of just goods, but that had just been thrown on, no organisation, not a lot of people standing behind these tables. So I went to see if I could go inside. There's 2 policemen on the door, they didn't let anyone in at that time. Anyway, so me and a lovely lady who we connected on my public Facebook page, so if you happen to watch this at some point, do message me. We thought, you know what, why don't we just start in a corner and just try to separate these goods into some sort of order. So there wasn't any space on the floor, it was just 2 of us in the corner trying with these boxes just a little bit, and then somebody else came and somebody else came, and then suddenly, without realising, within half an hour, everybody who was standing on that road, and it was people who lived on the block of flats, you know, just opposite the centre, or it would have been, you know, whoever had come down. There was people from, I mean, this lady who I started with, she wasn't actually from the area, she'd travelled from outside of London. And suddenly everyone was like, okay, so should we make this corner for, I don't know, nappies and toiletries and whatever? And suddenly after about half an hour I looked around and I realised, you know, people just didn't know how to start. And actually now everything was in full swing, and they were really coordinating this stuff. And after about an hour, actually I think with the help of some of you guys down there who'd recognised me and came up to speak to me, and I've seen a few people I know, activists and charity workers, I think the man on the door had seen that I'd communicated with these people, and some people had come up and spoken to me, and they let me in. So I went inside to the centre, and there was not that many people there, maybe 20 to 30 people there. They told me some people had been housed, sorry, not housed, they'd been sent to hotels, but not that many. So in that centre there was about 30. So I spent some time there, realising rapidly that there was something happening outside of these centres, this community drive of just stuff. And that stuff, of course, was helpful because when the stuff first started arriving, it had been taken into the centres, but there was just such a large, overwhelming amount of stuff that now, I mean, I don't know if people go to, if there's people in London and they go to Notting Hill Carnival. I mean, of course, Notting Hill Carnival's a route, but for those like myself who tend to stay in the Ladbroke Grove area, so, you know, this whole route down where Portobello Market is, through the estate, and round down to even where, yeah, right down to the market and past the market, down the road. It's just full of stuff. People were just bringing all this stuff. So it's really been just people going there and helping box it and trying to find places to store it, so that obviously in the long term people can use it. If you are watching this, by the way, just don't take any more stuff down. So that was the first thing. I'm kind of going chronologically. Is this really boring? Let me know. Am I going too slow? Is this what people are interested in? Do they just want me to answer the questions? I don't know. I'm just kind of going through what I saw. When I was there at the Rugby Portobello, at least, one thing that really struck me, and I've written it on this piece of paper, is the young people. I looked up at some point when things were in full swing, and I just looked around, and it was overwhelmingly young people. And I'm going to just be frankly honest, because people know that I'm frankly honest. I try my best to, you know, speak in a way that's inclusive and you know, that we can all understand. But I think there are stereotypes sorry, I'm getting some messages on my phone. I have to respond to this message. Sorry, 1 second. Sorry guys, 1 second. Okay, sorry. Still with me, hopefully? Yes. Shout if you have questions, or if I'm going too slow, if this isn't as much detail as you guys want, let me know. So yeah, young people, that was the main thing. And you know what? Let's just be real. There's certain stereotypes. Young men, young Caribbean men in groups with hoodies and trainers and speaking a certain way. Our stereotypes of Muslims, girls in hijabs, of our stereotypes of the working class. I looked up and all I could see around me were young black men, young Muslim men, young Muslim ladies in hijabs, just young minorities. They were all there to help. I can't tell you in that 2 or 3 hours that I was there, and how many, because I was mostly behind the tables coordinating, how many of these young people, these young teenagers came up to me. They were taking their own money out of their pockets and they said, "Can we give you money? What can we do to help?" They were so earnest about it. And I said, "Don't give money to people here, you know, go and either get donations or give them a link for donations." And it was about the time schools were out, and school teenagers in their uniform. This one girl sticks in my mind. I mean, there was quite a few of them in uniform, but there was this girl, she just was, she just had tunnel vision. She just kept coming. She was like, "Give me more drinks." And I was like, "They're heavy." She was taking them in an ice bucket, and she was like, "No, I need to take people drinks. What can I do? What can I do? What can I do?" As I said, young boys coming up saying, "What should we do? Should we give money? What do you need? Run into the shops getting things. So to me it was really, I just have to shout out the young people, because even today when I went back, it was young people, that community, you know, and then it was little things that stuck in my mind. Just, we're talking about this kind of community environment. You know, it's easy to give donations if you have money. There were people coming up, and I was very, you know, that's very nice and kind, and I'm not taking away from that, but they'd gone to, I don't know, there's a woman that came, she'd gone to Asda, and she'd brought 7 duvets, and she just brought them. That's amazing. But it was seeing people from the estate, from across the road, coming out of their house, and it's not an affluent area, and they've put together a bag of stuff. It's literally their own stuff. They haven't given a fresh bag of nappies. They've literally gone into their stash of nappies that they might be struggling to get, and they've put some nappies and their own clothes off their back and things into a bag to bring. And I think that was something that stuck in my mind. And there was people, of course, some people that had come from outside of West London, from across the country. I saw people just coming down, and it was really a spectrum of people. I'm not saying that it wasn't, but I think to deny the demographic of people that had come to that area, who live in that area, to deny the demographic of that estate and that area, and of what I saw was the majority of people that had come down there, I think is also to do a disservice into understanding, and we'll get into this later on, understanding what has happened here. So that's in terms of that. After that, I walked around the estate. I was like, okay, I've seen the centre, I've done some help here, I've been inside, I've spoken to the residents, let me go and speak to people. And I spent about an hour or two on the estate. Oh, I should say, one of the things that struck me when I did that, and I was walking, you know, from that first rugby Portobello, groups of Christian worshippers that had come, and they were praying. I saw 2 groups. One group that had come and they were just praying, and then there was another vigil, a candlelit vigil outside one of the churches. It was very beautiful. And then I went and spoke to people and just listened. I had some really in-depth one-on-one conversations with people on the estate, people from the tower. I listened into a lot of group conversations. I took part in group conversations, and I didn't post this on my public page, but this is some of the stuff that I was hearing from people on the ground yesterday, and people on the ground were angry. People on the ground were very, very angry. They were still in shock. One of the first places I went into one of the crescent, you know, one of the dead ends of the estate, where you could see the tower block, and you know, people were just walking. It was like a funeral. It was like a funeral. The environment, the somberness, the seriousness. Nobody was really talking. You just see a dozen people, 20 people, 30 people come, stand in front of that tower block as if they were standing in front of a hearse. There I spoke to a nursery teacher who said 2 of her nursery school kids from that tower block didn't turn up to school. They're missing, and there doesn't seem to be much hope of their survival. We now know that there's children as young as 6 months that have been killed. We know that. But there was a shock. It was a funeral. There was a funeral going on yesterday on the estate. People standing in silence and somber reflection for the tower, for the people of that tower, and there was anger. So these are some of the things I noted down after I talked to people. I noted down some of the things they said to me. I'm just reading off my screen here. One man, a white man, I suppose about his 40s, with a lovely dog. He was talking to some late girls, and they were saying, this is some of the things I heard in that conversation. They told me that what they felt that what had happened was murder, and the man said to me that he said they take people to The Hague for war crimes, but they don't care about what they do at home. And one of the girls who lives there said they've been at war with us for a very long time. This is a war crime because they've been at war with us. You know, they don't want us here anymore. Many dozens of comments about the fact that people there said to me that it's only blacks and Muslims on this estate. It's blacks and Muslims in this area, and they don't care about us, and that they've been trying to gentrify this area, and they're trying to get rid of us in that way. And one person said, I want to say exactly what they said so I can quote them. There's nothing but blacks and Muslims here, and they've been wanting us out of this white Kensington that they're trying to build for a minute or for a while. Someone said to me, that's one block down, and that's the only thing they're going to be thinking about tonight. They're going to be saying that's one block down, one less hassle for them. Someone said to me that they're finally going to ship us out of London, how they've always wanted to ship us out of this area. And the other thing that was interesting was a lot of people saying to me, a lot of anger. Actually, this was a very poignant point someone said to me. They said they want to make us plastic buildings, and then they make themselves palaces made of gold. And quite a few people said to me that they're lucky it's Ramadan, otherwise it would be riots tonight. And I actually walked away from that situation because in about half an hour, about 8 people told me about this same incident that they'd seen, which was that a police officer on the grounds at the very first few minutes of this incident, a Caribbean lady had gone up to him to say, you need to unlock the back door so people can come out. And this police officer had pushed her and told her, mind your business. And people were very angry about that, and it reminded me of what started the London riots after Mark Duggan's death, which the ingredients for the anger were there, but the tipping point was when a protester from Mark Duggan's friends and family who'd come outside of the police station asking the police to tell them details, was pushed by the police, and that's actually what sparked it. So that was in my mind. So I think we should be aware of the social environment on the ground, and that the ingredients are there. And there's a lot of anger on the ground. There is a lot of anger towards the council. I've been there for several hours across 2 days, and no, there is not a very large scale tragedy, so all of that in its place, but not the kind of organisation you'd be expecting to see from the council, and you would have heard some of that criticism on the news. There's the leader of Kensington Council, this councillor Nick Paget-Brown. He hasn't even tweeted. And I saw that he did some interviews today on the TV, and as you know, especially if you're an official, the first thing you should say in an interview is send condolences to the people that have lost their lives, which he didn't do at all on Good Morning Britain interview. And in the Channel 4 interview, he didn't say at the top of the interview. He had to be pushed to even acknowledge that it's a tragedy and send thoughts to those that had been killed. And I looked on his Twitter, and he's tweeted all the time over these terrorist attacks in London, but he's the leader of Kensington Council, and he's still yet to tweet about this. In fact, his last tweet, let me get up his last tweet actually, or I should just check now if he's tweeted, in case, this is information from earlier in the day. Yeah, still till now. You can go onto his Twitter and check his name. And still until now, he has not tweeted about what's happened. He has not sent out one condolence to the people in his own borough that have lost his life. And the thing is that this is why people on the grounds are angry. And I should just say that this was his last tweet, a Tory councillor, of course, but this is his last tweet from June the 10th. Is it really true that leftists bought and burned Conservative supporting papers on polling day? Fear of pluralism, frightening mindset. This man is concerned about people burning Conservative supporting papers, but he has yet to be tweeting about poor people in his own borough who have burned to death. And I'm saying that because, in a way, I want to provide analysis, but I think it's first important to relay what people on the ground in this community are saying. This kind of behaviour and treatment of them, this dismissiveness, yeah, is why people are angry. People are angry because hundreds of their fellow neighbours have had to die, have had to be burnt alive before this gets space on the TV, and then for them, their lead councillor is still reluctant to even send condolences. If we want to know what creates anger, it is not something that it comes out of irrational people, and we talk about this all the time. We talk about this all the time, guys. We've talked about it so much when it comes to the EDL, when it comes to Britain First. There is actually a connection to this story. The story of white working class Britain and the story of the working class minorities in this country. There is crossover, because anger, you're not born with anger, but we see the difference. We have to come to this reality that there is a difference between how ethnic minority working class people are treated in this country and how the white working class are treated in this country. We can discuss this more in depth if needed, but a disconnect of the reality on the ground. And I have to be 100, you know, before I talk about sensitive racial issues, you know, this discussion on racial issues and class issues shouldn't make you defensive if you happen to be white, or if you happen to be rich, or if you happen to be middle class. It shouldn't offend you if you truthfully understand what is happening. The offence comes from a defensiveness of a space that you haven't fully accepted within yourself. So today on the news I saw, and unfortunately I don't know her name because I hadn't seen her from before, but it was a Labour councillor in the area who was talking, who was on the Kensington and Chelsea Tenant Management Organisation on the board, and she was saying how she had been standing up on this issue and standing for the residents of that area for many years, to the point that that tenant management organisation was trying to get her thrown off the board. And she was a clearly middle to upper class lady. She didn't have she has a very specific type of accent. She was a white lady. She was an older lady, and she's been fighting for years on this issue. So we are not anybody who gets into this defensiveness of, oh, why are you saying all white people, or why are you saying all middle class people? You haven't grasped what we're discussing. So this isn't, I'm caveating that when I feel like I shouldn't, but this isn't the conversation for you if you don't want to have that conversation. What I would say to you is that if there's people on your Facebook page, on your social media, if you happen to like my page and you're watching this, and this kind of conversation makes you uncomfortable, don't switch off. Ask yourself why you're uncomfortable. Doubt yourself. Do not doubt the communities that are saying these messages. They know what they're talking about. That's their lives. Why are you putting a question mark on them? Why are you telling them that they're not talking correctly? or they don't know, or they're irrational, or they're angry. Even if they are angry, then you need to fully support them and come to the bottom of why they're angry. It's not that they're not born angry. They're not angry because they're black men. They're not angry because they're young people. They're not angry because they're Muslim. These are not inherent things in them. And we need to understand this anger. And we need to understand that they are, in fact, the tolerant community. You know, working class minority communities in West London are my community. They're the community I grew up with, and they are so much of my upbringing and education and my heart in many ways. And through growing up, and then again through my work in the media, one thing I've really realised is that we diminish and dismiss the voices of people who know what's going on. You can take this up to a level where we understand more holistically in the space, I don't know, of Jeremy Corbyn, of the movement to get him elected, when we were all there together as a movement of people, and we knew the media was chatting rubbish, and we knew, you know, we knew that what people really thought. But we have to understand that in this space, there's different groups, and we cannot lose the voice of minority, working class people in this space. We can't accept that people within this space of left-wing politics in this country are also often the ones that are trying to diminish this voice, and then suddenly try and make what they say unacceptable. You need to stop for a minute and to think what, for example, I don't know, the centre-right of the left-wing politics or the mainstream media or the PLP did to you when you were, for example, trying to campaign for Jeremy Corbyn, is what these communities face by you when they're trying to get their message across. I don't know if that makes sense, but this is very important to remember. These communities are not stupid communities. They are not irrational. If they are angry, there's a reason. They need to be listened to. They do not get a voice. They literally have to throw their babies out of burning buildings before they get space to talk, and even then they are criticised and they are told, why don't you wait for the investigation? Why don't you wait for the authorities? Why would they wait for the authorities to tell them about a problem with the authorities? And I've had several comments like this, and it's a ludicrous argument that at its core is saying that there is a problem with the community on the ground, or there is a problem with the way the community is behaving or dealing with or reflecting or viewing this issue. That is very dangerous. There is nothing to suggest that we need to doubt what the collective of this community is telling us. Not one person, not two people, not gossip on social media, a collective community of people. They are not all just, yes, there are some migrants, immigrants there, but there are many, many poor people that have been living in that community for generations. And there are activists and lawyers and journalists and campaigners and educated and rich and middle class. And there is a whole community of people who are telling us something on the ground. Why? Why are we dismissing what they say? Why should we? Oh, so maybe the people from the Hillsborough disaster, they should just given up. They should just waited. Waiting is silencing in times like this, because instead of saying, oh my God, why didn't we listen to this before? I'm getting comments, you know, I'm posting up this evidence from the community there, showing that they've been trying to address these issues with the council. I'm getting people saying, why? Why are you not waiting? Why are you making it a political issue? It is a political issue. Gentrification and in many ways, a form of ethnic cleansing of our city is a political issue. When you follow these things in Brixton, in Tottenham, in areas of East London, in Ladbroke Grove, in Kensington, in Notting Hill, there is a story throughout this city, and people in this city know it. I haven't come across, I mean, I don't know about outside of London, but I haven't come across anybody in London that doesn't know what's going on. Okay, guys, I've been ranting. Oh, I've had a lot to get off my chest, haven't I? I don't feel that, I have to say that this isn't my most objective, this isn't me being, no, I don't want to say the term objective, because this is being objective. I am here to first lay out to you what people on the ground are saying, and then from there we can do analysis. I'm going to look at some of my questions. Wow, yay, some of you are still with me. I don't know if anyone's lasted from the beginning or if you're popping in and out. When I watch lives, I always pop in and out. All right, let's do some of these questions. I want my glasses though. Right, let's go for this, guys. Let's see what we have. Send me any questions that you have. Did it really, Astola says, did it really happen because they were not the wealthiest? Look, this is an accident that has been brought about as a direct consequence of how not just this Tory government, although this Tory government is by far the worst, things have been getting progressively worse, but this happened because of a systematic treatment of poor people, and especially poor ethnic minorities in this city, in the inner cities, on our social housing estates. This is systematic policy. It is not just at the level of local councils, although it is there too. This is a systemic issue, not just the Tories, Tony Blair before them, of pushing people out, of gentrification. Listen, this is real life. If there's anybody who lives this, there are people who live this, or at least know people who live this. I know people. We all know people. Living in emergency accommodation, it's supposed to be emergency accommodation. You're just supposed to come in and out of that accommodation. But because it's emergency accommodation, the usual regulations of the Council for Social Housing don't apply. So, for example, you're not allowed to, shouldn't have a boy of a certain age in a room with a girl of a certain age, or you're supposed to have this, you know, in terms of shower access or whatever. Cases, so many cases. People in emergency accommodation for 18 months. Bed bugs, their kids being hit. And these are cases I've seen with my own eyes, either through reporting or through friends and family. Bed bugs in their bed. Every time they say there's bed bugs, there's this, there's that. When you move in us, they keep the environment in these areas so bad, and then they tell them the only option is to move out of London. And there we have it. I had a friend who called me today. She said she was following my Facebook posts in this exact same situation. And do you know where she called me from? After a lifetime of being born, her mum being born in this London, herself being born in London, her kids being born in London. Do you know where she called me from? She called me from Norwich, because that's where she's been pushed to. And she said to me, nobody in Norwich understands. I'm trying to explain it to them, they don't understand. So this isn't just something that, the reason people are so angry, this is what we need to understand. The reason they are so angry, it is like that block and every single one of those babies that have been, it is a catastrophe. For people that looking on that, those flames and what's happened represents everything that's happened to get us to that point. It was this horrific end, this horrific burning point to something that they had been screaming about for so long. And what we need to be careful about now is that those screams, unheard, nothing done about them, turned into literal screams of people being burnt alive. These are their neighbours, people they've grown up with. And the reaction to that, it needs to be adequate, because if that is then not dealt with properly, we have the ingredients for some very severe social unrest. and then we'll see the media demonising the people that are doing that social unrest, because they're just not recognising what the life on the ground is, and what these communities have been trying to tell us. So I hope that in a way answers your question. Shout out from Sheffield, please. Yes, shout out to Sheffield. Someone is sending acknowledging that it's the martyrdom of Imam Ali today. Naeem, but so, what did you make of the 2 visits from May and Corbyn? Is it just me, or is Corbyn just an amazing person? Or should I be saying, how gross was it that May was not even speaking to residents? I can't see the rest of the... Naeem, but so, I'm going to try and bring them up here. Okay, I think I can see them up here now. What did I think? Well, first of all, BBC News at 10 report didn't mention anything about the fact that people were angry at Theresa May. They just made it out like it was a fact. Oh, May came to the area. She spoke to firemen. This is what she said in Downing Street. No. Then they didn't mention how Jeremy Corbyn was praised and treated like a hero. And then they just went and put all this pressure on Sadiq Khan, who I'm not a fan of. But why are you mentioning that he got heckled? Why are you mentioning Sadiq Khan got heckled if you're not mentioning how Theresa May was treated? Theresa May knew she had to go and hide in, because she would not have lasted a second out with those people, but she should have if she cared. But they don't care. When are we going to realise this? When are we going to realise that they simply do not care? They should have come out into the community, yeah. I mean, just this woman's a coward. We've just seen what she did in this election campaign. But what that community needed was the opportunity to express their anger to the Prime Minister. That's what they needed. Don't come and go and hide. They expressed that anger as well to Sadiq Khan, who's also Labour. Who they didn't express that anger to was Jeremy Corbyn. And you know what? There was a message there, because we need to realise that Kensington has always been Tory, and it just went to Labour. That was a revolution. A revolution out on the ground in London. There's so much happened in our election results that we don't have enough time to analyse every single one of these stories. One place we knew we had to analyse was Kensington. Why? Why did it go Labour? And you know what was so interesting, if you watched the live feed, was that people said, there was people coming up to Jeremy Corbyn on the street and saying, we voted for you, we voted for you, we voted for you. They didn't vote for the MP. They didn't vote for the Labour Party. It didn't matter really what the party was called, to be honest. What mattered was what Jeremy Corbyn stood for. Somebody who understands that community, and he gets it. Caveat, does that necessarily mean it's enough? It has to be said now. It absolutely has to be said. If I don't say it now at this moment, I will not feel that I'm being true to myself. There is some things I didn't like. It was a stage managed performance, a stage managed trip, so it should be. He's the leader of the opposition. You can't just go, I mean, he did spend much time on the street, but that's absolutely fine, but it's stage managed. But the demographic that was at the church he visited, and I would have liked to see, correct me if I'm wrong, but I didn't see him visit a mosque, and I would have liked to see him visit a mosque. But the demographic of the area that place that he went to, this church, it was not representative of the demographic of that area. And I don't think I was happy about that. And then there's something else. I have a friend who usually does watch my lives. She might even be watching now. A good friend of mine, and about a week before the election was called, I think I've mentioned this before, I had a real honest rant to 2 of my very good friends about how I was feeling and how I felt bogged down by all this nonsense about Jeremy Corbyn, and I'd gotten fed up of sitting with my friends who worked at NGOs and worked as activists and middle class, and lived in, I lived in Ealing before, lived in Ealing, and they lived here, and certain demographics of my friends who are very much like me, and I love them dearly. But I was saying these 2 friends that I've become tired. I've become tired of sitting down and arguing about Jeremy Corbyn's tie and arguing whether he could do better, when I know that there are real problems of Islamophobia and racism in this country. They're being ignored in this rhetoric. It came out, for example, who at the time of the do you remember when Donald Trump did this Muslim ban, and Owen Jones, this somebody who writes very well on certain issues, and I often read what he says, but he'd refused to go to, there was all these protests about the Muslim ban, and Owen Jones had decided to divide this whole protest movement up over the same rehashed, I'm sorry to say, but I'm saying, and this is the thing, I'm saying this from the perspective of those in a community who are a part of this overall movement, but who are not a part of the debate about the allegations in the Socialist Worker Party over somebody, rape allegations or whatnot that there is. And as I say, I do know it quite in, I have been told the details on one side, the other, but there was anger at that time. There was a lot of anger. And I'll tell you what people at those protests said to me. They said, why does a white middle class man come and get to tell us that he is going to divide the movement supposed to help blacks and Muslim minorities because of an allegation made in another space? Why does the right of that one woman get to come in and be more important than the collective of these minorities? And for them, they were saying, this makes them feel unwanted. This makes them feel like they're not good enough. And I'd heard all of this, and I'd been hearing this, and I'd been seeing that there's not really a space for these minority voices, even though they are such a big part of the movement. And I wanted to re-anchor myself in that space, and then the election was called, and we've had everything since then. But I say all of this ramble to say this. This is a key moment for Jeremy Corbyn, because, as many of those residents said, that they supported him, but now he has a responsibility. If we really want to change the space of left-wing politics in this country, which I should say to you, most minorities don't have time for, all this bickering. To them, it's like bickering. To many minority, especially working class minority groups, when they look at this left-wing, middle-class, white politicking, you look to them how MPs and on PMQs look to us. So you should we should bear that in mind. So it's a very important time, and Jeremy Corbyn needs to take that into consideration. People were very angry about the dismissal, the way Diane Abbott was treated, for example. So I think actually now that this issue has come to head, we need to acknowledge this space and talk about it openly. But beyond that, obviously, the landscape of British politics, at least for these inner city communities, was laid to bare. Theresa May is so hated, she wouldn't even dare show her face. Sadiq Khan, who stood for the old, those new Labour values, centre-right Labour, booed. Who was embraced? Jeremy Corbyn was embraced. Jeremy Corbyn must now live up to the ideals and standards that he's put forward, and he must go forward with that. I think that is the only way for him. How far away are you from it, please? I'm not that far away from it. Basically, I am. I do not live in that area, but I live in the area next to it. How are you, Kia? Mashallah, thank you. Mohammed Naghi, what's the death toll at, and are the media reporting the actual figures? This is a good question. Are they delaying it? I've seen some unconfirmed reports of 100 plus, whilst the media have only confirmed. I can't see the rest. I'm assuming 17 now, I think the media have confirmed. Let me tell you about these figures. There's several reasons why these figures are not coming out. It's not just one clear thing. One reason these figures are not coming out is because they physically cannot get to these bodies. These bodies are burnt through. I spoke to 2 families that said that police and hospital staff have said they need to wait now for dental identification. So that's one reason. It's just to think about it is horrible, but that is the fact. Second is sometimes next of kin need to be informed, or someone needs to be identified. Whole families have been wiped out in certain cases. There is nobody for identification. They actually just don't know. They will have a list of about 600 people that live in that block, but how do they know? Was there a guest there? Was somebody staying there? Who was at home? Who wasn't at home? So those are some practical reasons. Another reason is they don't want to start a riot. There is anger on the ground. They know. There's not a heavy police presence on the ground, although I was told riot police were there while the fire was raging. But no, on yesterday and today, there's been very small community level policing because they know they can't agitate that area. That area, there's a lot to say about that area. An amazing area, the home of Carnival, the area that has taught us about community and showed us so many millions of people in London and across the country, but certainly in London. Like, I think there is not a Londoner that has ever been to Carnival and not affiliated to that area. And the closer you get, if you're from West London, if you're from those surrounding areas, such a pivotal area for us. But an area with its own dynamic. And I think that if you come out and say 300 people have died, for example, following something that the people in that area think is your fault, you are going to cause a lot of tensions and a lot of social unrest. So I think that's one reason. But they need to be careful now because people are getting angry that it's not being reported, and they need to start reporting. And actually I saw a tweet by Lee Jasper that said, in other circumstances you say up to a certain number of people are dead, but here it's 17. I've heard from charities on the ground that it is over 100. Of course, I can't confirm that. It's very hard to know what's going on the ground because it's very confusing. And you know what? It's community-led. The council is not doing enough. There's no trust in the council. There's no trust. You have to trust. When I hear off the record finding out that when NHS staff have asked Kensington Council if they can go and help on the ground, they've been told, no, you can't go down there. You're not allowed. You have to wait until people contact you. But how would they know? How are these victims going to know? They're in shock. You need to outreach to them. What do you mean wait for them to contact you? They've just lost everything. So, there's a lot of bad mismanagement going on, I believe. The extent of it, I could be wrong about, but that it's going on is certainly there. And I think that they need to start addressing that, and they need to start acknowledging the scale of what has happened, because they're talking about it's going to take weeks to know. But at some point, if the authorities and the media don't start acknowledging the scale of the problem, the community, it's just going to make the community more angry, so it's going to be counterproductive. It's hard to know, and this is I'm sharing this just so that we're on the journey to knowledge together. But it was hard to gather on the ground that there was only about 30 people in this rugby Portobello centre by the time I got there. They told some people had been sent to hotels, but we didn't know. We know the council have said they've housed 40 people. But I knew the number. I knew the number of families, but now I can't remember. But I know there's I think there's either 120 or 130 blocks in that flat. So to me, it said they've said they've housed, but they haven't housed. We were told on the ground that these people are all. Sadiq Khan came in. It just so happened, basically today, I have a big long ramble, but basically today I'd been called back to the Westway Centre, and at that point you could only go in authorised with a band and whatever, and it was empty in there. There was 12 people in there, and it just so happened that while I was there, Sadiq Khan came round and he was talking to volunteers, and he said that most people have gone to family and friends' house. So people don't even know where these people. The council doesn't know where these people are. There were people walking into the centre. One man walked in and said, I've come from outside of London. My whole family relatives were in a flat in the 17th floor. Is there a list? What is that? Nobody knew anything. Council workers standing there, they didn't know. So it just doesn't seem very organised. And so it's hard to guess. But to me, I'm thinking if there's 120 flats, there's at least 120 families. And there was nobody. They've said they've relocated 40 families. there was not more. There was nobody at the mosques today. There was nobody at the churches today. There was a handful of people at the Westway main centre. So where are the rest of these people? And you don't have reliable information. I was told several times that they don't really have any survivors from the 17th floor up, but there's 27 floors if I'm not correct in this flat. So to me, I think 100, and as again, I actually genuinely hope I'm wrong, and I have to eat these words and remind myself that I shouldn't estimate facts before they're out, but it seems at the moment that 100 is a conservative estimate. And we know that there are babies among the dead, babies at 6 months, and many young children, There are 5 children missing from one family home. What's strange is I have to say that I do find this 17 number, I haven't done an exact analysis, but when I'm watching the news, they seem to be reporting from victims who have lost family, and they're saying they've lost their family, and it seems to me that number adds up to more than 17, so I don't know, but yeah, that's fine. Let me read the things here. How long have I been? 40 minutes. I usually give an hour for these. Let me see what else I have. Guys, I don't know if this has been useful, or put your questions in. John Christopher says, not only do white racists hate Sadiq Khan, Muslims hate him too. Listen, Sadiq Khan is really not popular in the Muslim community, I'll give you that. He's just really not, he's not popular. That's true. John is saying, why didn't Corbyn bother to visit a mosque? God only knows, and that he noticed as well, it was literally white as far as the eye could see. And I'll tell you something, that's not the area there. Look, I mean, it is in parts of Kensington, but that area is not predominantly white. That estate is not predominantly white. It just isn't. I mean, look at the pictures of the people that are missing. So yeah, we did go for that. We did discuss that. Sean Dutton says, I feel it may have been a cleansing scenario too. This has a huge potential to blow up beyond all expectations, unfortunately. Just to be clear as well, the cleansing of the area of poor people who in that area happen to be of black and minority and Muslim backgrounds, the cleansing part is not the building. Look, we're not, there's no conspiracy here. We're not saying that, oh, they burnt the house. No, what we're saying is the consequence of a systemic gentrification and cleansing of poor minority people from inner London areas, and making those social housings aesthetically pleasing for the private, rich, mostly white people that are congregating into those areas instead, has caused this fire. You spent £10 million putting cladding to make the block look nice, while you left pipes and power surges and the concerns of the community living inside there, in the same thing we've seen in councils. This is not just a Kensington problem. Kensington is just maybe one of the worst examples. In social housing across this city, in London, they are trying to push people out of London. They try to make their living standards as awful as possible, and then send them letter after letter after letter after letter saying, oh, well, if you don't like it, move to here. Well, if you don't like it, move to Brighton. If you don't like it, move to Norwich. If you don't like it, move to Norfolk. They don't care that they're ripping these people out of the communities they've been in for decades and decades. This is what is going on. When we're saying this is the fault of this policy, that's what we're saying. We're saying if you had spent £10 million trying to improve the lives of the people living there, instead of using it as a part of your strategy to gentrify the area and push them out, they would be alive right now. I mean, I don't know why to be honest, I don't know why people are disputing this right now. It's the logic of disputing it is, I don't see it. I mean, we're more than welcome to have this conversation, but I don't see it. Alison says unity is essential now. I think unity is essential now. However, I want to say something, that unity in circumstances like this needs to be rooted in the rooted in the anchor of the communities affected. If we are standing in front of them, we should only be standing in front of them to be a loudspeaker to what they're saying, and if we're standing behind them, is to give them support. We should not try and hijack what these communities have the right to say. They are talking, we need to listen, we need to relay what they're saying, and we need to give them support. This is an area of black and ethnic minorities. This is an area of immigrants and Muslims. This is an area of people who are demonized in this press, in this country, who have faced historic problems in poor areas of the inner city where they have given so much. This area has given us Notting Hill Carnival. This area has given us London so much. It really is tragic that this is how they're being treated in return. The ethnicity of this issue is also meant to divide the working class. They want us to fight amongst ourselves rather than fight them. I think that's true to the extent that, as I said, there is a unifying story of the working class, but that we have seen two very different strategies for white working class who have been taken to the right, and nationalistic issues, to hate migrants, to hate Muslims, to hate other working class minority groups, and the treatment of minority working class people. I think to an extent we need to see that story together, and to an extent we have to respect and acknowledge the specific and devastating treatment of minorities far well and beyond the treatment of white working class. In one sentence, one could say that white working class are used and deprived by the system, but they are used to prop it up. Whether it's vote for us, we'll give you an EU referendum, listen to us scaremongering about Muslims, but minorities never get that treatment. Minorities are squeezed and suffocated in their treatment, to be marginalised. So I think that's one of the key differences. So unity is really, really important, but unity shouldn't be used to silence the voice of minorities and people who have something to say, religious people, and I'm not going to get into all the politics and whatever, but I mean, it even goes into a space of criticism of the DUP and criticism of religions and whatever. So we have to, there's some complexities to that. James says it's class war, and to be honest, I can't disagree with that. I think that is everything. Is there any other question? Oh, yeah. There are a few other questions. It is sad. I'm not from England, but I've noticed in everywhere there is socialised housing. They never take care of that area like they should, nor do they try to update it for safety reasons. And then things like this happen. They have this in Plattenbau in Germany also. I do not live in Germany, but I have my people there. The living conditions in these buildings are not good. Yeah. And you know what is this idea that we, and why we have very specific hate towards the Tories is that they're telling people to hate poor people. I mean, in the white working class, they're telling people to hate themselves, and people are just voting for it. But we are seeing very... And I should just say, of course, there are white people, there's Europeans living in that block of flats, but I think to deny the demographic makeup of that area, the class demographic of that area, is to do a big injustice into understanding what has happened. So, guys, has it been an hour yet? I don't know, it keeps saying 40 minutes, so how can it be 40 minutes? I've been talking for ages. I'm going to leave it there. If there's no more questions, I'll give another minute or two for questions. Was there anything else I wanted to say? I think I feel like I've got things off my chest a little bit. If you're in London, please don't take any more supplies, just donate. Somebody had asked me for a donation link. I will put it in the comments. And is there anything else? Here we go. Just donate. I'm going to do one last one on questions and I'm going to go. Oh, Amanda says to me, 1 hour, 3 minutes. Oh, my cheeky little timer thing has just been on at 40 minutes the whole time, and I kept thinking, oh, blooming heck, this 40 minutes is taking ages. Okay, so it's time to go. One last question from Hufsa. How do you think these rich versus public problems can be solved? By demanding a more just system. It's not going to be solved overnight, by the way. Jeremy Corbyn's not going to solve this overnight, guys. Jeremy Corbyn's not going to have an ultimate solution. We have to just take step by step. I think, I don't know, for me, covering a story like this or going through the last 2 days, it's still that balancing act of this, the stark realisation of what a miracle Jeremy Corbyn is, and to think that there could have been another type of Labour and we wouldn't have made this progress, and it would have been, it could have been Sadiq Khan. I mean, I was just the most dry. Just dry. That's all I have to say, just dry. Disconnected. Jeremy Corbyn is not disconnected. He really knows people. He really knows the issues of this city and the issues of this country. And that is, I don't know, so it felt like seeing that. And then from the other end, it felt like also a stark reminder of the limitations of Jeremy Corbyn, potentially, but also quite realistically, for some real issues facing specifically, I think, ethnic minorities and other poor minorities in this country. But I think that we have to make the most out of this opportunity. I don't know, after that I just thought, wow. I haven't even thought about the elections for 2 days, because I don't know if this makes sense, but the reasons we fought for the election, the reason why young people and minorities and the Muslim community and everybody that had been disenfranchised by politics jumped on to push for Jeremy Corbyn. Yes, Jeremy Corbyn. There was an anti-May element in the sense that we knew how bad that was, but we were saying that we also prefer this type of Labour against the horrific Tory government. And I think it just put into very stark reality why we've been doing this. Why have we been saying it's so dangerous? Why have we been saying that no good can come out of this? Why are we pushing it? Like, why are we not stopping to think that what the Tory government want to do is to cut the firemen that ran into that building to save lives? Boris Johnson, who may well still be our next Prime Minister the way things are going, cut 13 fire engines from London. I've been on protests on top of fire trucks with people from the Fire Brigades Union. For several years they've been protesting. Why is this Tory government saying it cares when it's cutting the NHS funding that we need in moments like this? Why are they cutting our housing? They are, you know, I've talked too much, I want to end it, but you know, I think that I think we need to check our own privilege. We just need to check our own privilege. Wherever you are in this country, whatever standing, however much money you have, however you live, you need to check your own privilege. Because I'm sure there's an argument that the poorest of the poor in this country need to check their privilege in some ways vis-a-vis somebody living abroad or in different circumstances. But what you can do if you want to change that gap on a community level is to check your privilege, to be aware that, for me, I'll give myself as an example, for me to be aware that that I no longer live with in an environment where I'm seeing the realities of poor communities in this country on a day-to-day basis. Because alhamdulillah, which means thank God, you know, I work, you know, I'm making something, I've got my flat, I can pay my rent, I can have the luxury of what is in essence, guys, a tiny little box. But, you know, as you can see from behind me, a nice flat, I have somewhere, I've got the luxury of living on my own, somehow scraping together the rent, and that life is not the same for far too many people in this country. And that when you have a system which is literally like squeezing from the bottom, you know, it's squeezing and squeezing and squeezing from the bottom, people are dying at that bottom. That's what's happening. The very poorest, the most ill, the most vulnerable, the disabled. It just hasn't got to us yet. So don't wait for it to get to you, because you have to think of all the collateral damage that's going to be caused to get for you to start feeling it. And we're all feeling it, you know, of course we're all feeling it, but there's a difference between feeling it against the luxuries of your life and belonging to communities that have the community spirit and so many beautiful things to teach us, but that are really struggling and that haven't been listened to. So no, I don't think we need to wait until an inquiry. What's an inquiry going to tell us? We didn't wait until the Iraq War inquiry to go and protest the day before the Iraq War. Why do we have to wait? I mean, it's just sometimes, I know I feel like it's been a very ranty, angry Nargess vlog. You know, sometimes we just need to check what we're saying, because we need to identify that when we know it's wrong to say it in a certain context, but that there's something about this specific context that's making us want to find an excuse. So you need to ask yourself, why am I making this excuse? We don't need to. We don't need to wait. We don't need to wait. We need to be saying today, tomorrow, the next day, oh my God, this was going on and we didn't know. Now this community has had this tragic accident. They've lost loved ones. We've now found out what they've been saying for years. We demand answers. Not, well, how do they know? Well, the community's being emotional. Oh, well, why are they angry? Why are they not waiting? Why are you asking so many questions? Why are you asking the victims questions? Ask the people that need to answer the questions. It's not the people on the ground. Salam from the Philippines. Salam. How many people dead in the Grenfell Tower? Unofficially, off the record, they've been told over 100. Officially, they've only said 17. Boris is a beep, beep, beep. Firefighters were such heroes. After all the huge cuts, they were there to do their duty without fail. On that note, guys, I'm going to end it. It's been so long. I don't believe it. It's almost 20 to 1. I'm going to go and eat until I can open my fast. Please, please, please. If you are a religious person, if you believe in prayer, whatever religion you're from, you might not belong to a religion, but you still pray. Whatever you do, you might light a candle. I don't know, but please think of the people that have lost their life. It's just really so horrific. Today I'd been called in to help a specific family in the centre, and I was walking up. There was a woman in a hijab, maybe in her 40s. She was standing by the block of flats and she was hysterical. She was just hysterical. And I was in a rush to get to this family who I'd been told need urgent help. And I walked a few steps and I said, how did I walk past that? How did I walk past that? And I went back and I just said, I'm sorry. I just need to give you a hug. And I hugged her, and she just was sobbing, and she was crying for a few minutes, maybe 5 minutes, and then she started talking, and she said that she lost her best friend. She lost her best friend and her 2 little children. And she obviously had an affinity to the youngest child. She goes, the youngest child was my daughter. She was like my daughter. And she just was saying that she always complained about that flat. They never did anything. She always had complaints about the flat. They're not telling us anything. They don't know. And I think that just to remember that there's actually people who have lost people. There was another gentleman who said he's out there because his friend had 5 children in the flat. They don't know where. 5 children in one family. There are orphans out there tonight because there are children we know who have survived, siblings, but their other siblings and their parents have not survived. And we know that on the ground. And we know that there is at least one case of a 6-month-old baby who perished with her mother. And just so many other cases. I spoke to people whose sisters were inside. There was a case I saw on the news. I didn't speak to this gentleman myself, but he lost his whole family. He lost his whole immediate family. His mum, his dad, his sisters, gone. And just to understand the trauma of these individuals who had to, in many occasions, talk to their loved ones to try and calm them down, and had to hear their loved ones burned to death. So it's really, it's just too much to think about. It's really too much. I think there is something very specific about how we've reacted to being burnt alive, because we know it's one of the most horrific things. We really do know. We really do know, don't we? What can you do? Thoughts with everybody. Solidarity with that community. We stand with you. However angry you are, whatever you need to go through, however you're feeling it, we need to support them. And we will continue to have this dialogue and conversation. I hope it has been somewhat not too ranty, I suppose. Nargess was on one today. Not too ranty, I suppose, but hopefully useful for some of you. I decided not to take my camera down. I did not take any photos. I did not take any names. I did not do anything but go down and listen. So I have given as much information as I can about what I've seen the last 2 days. God bless you all. Those who are fasting, shout out. Not long to go now. Enjoy your last few days of Ramadan. I'm on holiday from Sunday, so that I'm not really going to be online next week, but I shall see you when I get back. Bye now.